Hello friends, Sylvia here from Sylvan Starlight Creations. Welcome back to another episode of Tiny Tips and Tutorials. Today's video should be short and sweet. I'm just going to show you how I prep my journal before starting a new layout or spread in it. These are optional tips. You do not have to do this to be able to create in your journals. It does not have like the importance of things like, priming your page or that sort of thing. It's just helpful tips. So, without any further ado, the first thing I'm going to do is actually insert wax paper in between my pages. And I do this to protect the rest of the journal. I use a lot of wet media and stuff, and sometimes, as you can see here, it seeps through pretty good. And the wax paper just helps it from bleeding through to the next page. So you can also use parchment paper. The reason I prefer to use wax paper most of the time is because once I get my wax paper lined up like I have it here, I'm actually going to take some tape and tape it together to hold it in place so it doesn't move while I'm working in my journal. And the tape doesn't stick so well to the parchment paper. So, I didn't tape it together forever, so if you choose to use parchment paper, it'll be totally fine. All right. Oh, and I actually forgot to mention, so once the wax paper, I actually reuse this wax paper multiple times. I'll use it for multiple layouts until I feel like it's had enough. And then once it's had enough, I'll use it to line my, I have like a spray box for my splatter for when I use my spray inks and stuff. And I will use it to line that. It makes the box last longer. And then eventually I have other papers that I can, tear out the good pieces. So you could see where I used it in my journal, but I can tear out the good pieces of this later on and use it in other projects. So nothing goes to waste in my art studio. So like I said, I like to use a lot of wet media in my art journals. And what this does is it can cause the pages to warp pretty badly. So what I've started to do is actually glue my pages. I'll take 2 pages like this and glue them together. It gives the pages a little bit of extra strength and stability. It won't completely eliminate the warping, but it really does make a big difference. I do this in one of 2 ways, usually depending on what medium I'm running the lowest on. But the first option is to use my gel medium. This also comes in jars. If you don't have this, the Multimedia Matte by Ranger also works really well. So, either one, take your pick. I'm just going to use my gel medium today by Dina Wakley. And today I'm just going to go ahead and squirt it onto my page. Usually I put it onto my mat and then brush it on from there, but for the sake of time, we're going to do it this way. You just want to make sure you've got nice, even coverage. The whole thing, should be coated pretty well. Especially focus on the edges of your page, because that's usually where you'll see a little bit of lifting, if you're going to see any lifting. So I have a little bit more than I need, so I'll just kind of brush it over to the other side. And then I like to take my my flat plastic palette knife and just sort of burnish my pages together. If you don't have one of these, you can actually use an old gift card or credit card. And of course, if you've got a bone folder, go ahead and use that. But this is what I usually do. So that is the gel medium side. I'm actually just going to wipe up a little bit of this that oozed out here. But I do like to burnish it pretty good so it doesn't separate while I'm working. The other option is to use your Dilutions glue stick. I'm especially partial to my Dilutions glue sticks because they actually work. Most glue sticks that I've found don't really work so well, but this one does. And again, same thing, you want to make sure you've got pretty good coverage. The only thing when you're working with a glue stick is you've got to work a little bit faster because the glue stick dries faster. But once again, I'm going to pay special attention to my edges, but I do want to make sure my entire page has good coverage. So there's pros and cons. You know, sometimes I use one, sometimes I use the other. This is less wet to your page, you know, so you might get a little bit less warping, and it dries a little faster, but I tend to go through more glue stick when I do this. On the flip side, again, I'm going to burnish it down just like I did with the gel medium. On the flip side, when I'm working with the gel medium, I have to wait for it to dry, you know, before I move on, that sort of thing. So there's pros and cons. I do both. It really doesn't make a big difference, but. And then once I've got this, the third thing that I do to prep my book is, like I mentioned, I use a lot of wet media. And the wet media can soak through like the seam or the binding on the page and kind of, you know, seep through into the rest of the book. So I like to cover this with tape. You can use straight masking tape. If you're going to use masking tape, you're going to want a lighter colored masking tape, not the darker stuff. Unless the darker stuff goes with, you know, whatever you're going to do for your layout, because you'll need a lot of gesso to cover that. Same thing applies if you choose to use washi tape. Just kind of be conscious of the color and design that you use. I usually use the washi tape that I make from our masking tape. I've got a video showing how I make this, and I will link to that at the end of this video and down in the description box below. In that video, I said that I used wax paper to store it, but I've actually found that flattening the parchment paper is better because the tape is a little sticky and it does like to stick to the wax paper. Kind of takes up some of the wax with it and it makes it less sticky. But basically all I do is take my piece of tape and I lay it down the middle. By using the prettier tape like this, not only does it protect my book, but it actually adds an extra design element. So it's just kind of a nice thing to do. And sometimes I'll tear off the little excess and put it in another spot, and that'll end up being the start of my background. From here, I would go ahead and start working on my background. You know, start working on, you know, the rest of the layout. I've actually got a YouTube series, or not a YouTube series, a Zoom series. It's an art journal along series. I'll link to that down below. We do lots of in-depth mixed media projects and that. So I'd love it if you guys, you know, join me for one or all or whatever you feel like it. But I will link that down below. I'll also link down any of the materials that I used. Except for this is just regular wax paper you just get from, you know, the grocery store. It's not... I think mine happens to be Reynolds brand, but you can use the generic stuff. I'm sure it'll work just fine. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Feel free to share it with your friends. That always means a lot. If you're not aware already, I've got a really small Facebook group. We do fun little challenges and things. We just started our first challenge. It's called Sylvan Starlight Creators and Friends. I will also link to that in the description box below. And once again, thanks so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you next time. I hope you learned a little something. Bye for now. Bye.